that is not a fireable offense. You can scold him,
Bienvenidos,
you
buenos
can,
días.
you know,
Vamos a quitar
do a lot of things. I don't
esto de aquí. Listo. Bienvenidos, vamos a empezar el directo de bolsa. Estoy en chinga loca, literal. Son las 10 de la mañana, iba a empezar a las 9, pero pasaron muchas cosas acá en los gráficos. Necesito el gráfico completo, razón por la que ahora no lo ven. Ahora es también un screener con las mejores del día. Es B35, qué locura. ¿Qué más? Sí, las noticias como siempre, claro, dejar algo ahí. Y listo. Vamos a ver el breaking news de Trump, debe ser en relación a Powell. Ahorita cuento eso.
I was there and I said, I'm going to produce something, I don't know what, because they had shut down this massive coal plant, one of the biggest in the country. And it was just purchased by the gentleman that you met yesterday, a very substantial man. I don't know if he's maybe not as substantial as you, I'm not sure. But he's pretty substantial, you know who I'm talking about. And they're going to spend billions of dollars on rebuilding it, and it's going to be the largest plant of its kind in the world, I believe, actually in the world, and it's going to be great. So we really fulfilled that promise to Homer City, but it's to Pennsylvania, basically. I won Pennsylvania, and very conclusively won Pennsylvania, so I owe them a big debt of gratitude, but thank you for bringing that up. We raised 92, it's actually going over 100, so it'll be over $100 billion to be invested in Pennsylvania. It was Pennsylvania Energy Project. So we had, everybody was there. Larry Fink was there. I mean, everybody was there and done a great job. The senator did a great job. And we were very proud. That was a great meeting yesterday. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, actually for each of you, so for the Crown Prince, are you planning on taking any of the Patriot missiles that you're going to receive from the United States and divert those to help Ukraine?
We have no current plans, as we have an operational requirement inside Bahrain to keep them there for the present time.
He's got plenty of them, too.
And Mr. President, on the fentanyl bill,
They're wonderful pieces of kit.
They work very well.
American technology is the best.
Yep.
and on the fentanyl bill that you're
That's
signing.
maybe the most important part of this. He has his choice of everything, and we make the best military equipment by far in the
Bar
world.
none.
There's nothing close, right?
Bar none.
Yeah, thank you.
And on the fentanyl bill that you're signing today, do you hope that that's going to restart law enforcement cooperation with China on getting the fentanyl?
Yeah, I think China's been helping out. I mean, it's been a terrible situation for many years with fentanyl, but since I came here, we're talking to them, and they're making big steps. They're also, as you know, being penalized. You know that, right? They're being penalized with tariffs because of the fentanyl, but they want to do something. We'll see what happens.
Mr. President, I know.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. An American from Tampa was beaten to death. He was killed by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. His family has been calling on you to help prosecute his killers. Are you going to do that? An American from Tampa?
Yeah, your first sentence is really, go ahead.
An American citizen from Tampa, Florida, has been killed in the West Bank. His family has been asking on you to prosecute him. Are you going to help finding his
Yeah, well, so first of all, have you seen yesterday, Ambassador Huckabee has asked the Israelis to conduct an investigation. We want to get all the information about who was involved. We protect all American citizens anywhere in the world, especially if they're unjustly murdered or killed. So we're gathering more information, but I hope you saw yesterday, Ambassador.
You're now watching the Halftime Report. That was just video of the president at the White House taking questions after a report crossed that's saying that Trump will likely fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell, quote unquote, soon, according to a White House official. The president now saying that is highly unlikely. When we get over to our Megan Casella live in D.C. with much more on this story. Megan.
Hey, Frank, a very fast-moving story here, but first I did confirm with a senior White House official just in the last hour that the president was indicating he was likely to fire Jerome Powell soon. The backstory there was he had been meeting in the Oval Office with a dozen Republican lawmakers late yesterday. He asked them, he floated the idea about firing Powell. He said now nearly all of them approved it, and the senior White House official said the president then said he was indicating he was likely to do it soon. Now, there was always a caution around that nothing was finalized. The decision could always change. It might not happen, and it might not necessarily be imminent. But then just there, Frank, we were listening to the president sort of downplay this reporting. He was saying that, yes, he's very concerned about Powell, and he thinks that he's too late on interest rates, but he said, quote, no, we're not planning on doing anything with regards to firing him. He was then asked whether he was completely ruling out the idea of firing the Fed chair, and the president replied, quote, I don't rule out anything, but I think it's highly unlikely unless he has to leave for fraud. He went on to say he thinks it's possible there's fraud involved in that ongoing renovation of the Federal Reserve building downtown. So here we have it, Frank. At the latest is that while we did have this reporting from a senior White House official saying the president was likely to go through with the firing, now the president saying he's not thinking about doing it, though he's not also completely ruling it out. The final thing I would say is that no official comment from the Federal Reserve on this, but Frank, as you know, Chair Powell has been very consistent for the last 6 or 8 months or so that he is planning to finish out his term no matter what happens. Just as a reminder to our viewers, he was asked in November by a reporter whether he would step down if President Trump asked him to. Powell replied no, and he was asked in that same press conference whether he felt that the president had the legal authority to either fire or demote him, and at the time Powell replied, not permitted under the law. Frank.
All right, I'm Megan Casella live in D.C. Great reporting on this in the last hour. Just some wild swings when it came to the reporting. Again, Megan Casella, thank you very much. Again, you are watching the Halftime Report. Let's get to our investment committee. Joining us for this hour, we have Joe Terranova, Steve Weiss, and Sarat Sethi. I want to show you a chart right here. Markets are well off their lows now after hearing from the president, but you kind of see the chart of the S&P right there. Took a bit of a dip and now recovered. Right now, taking a look at the state of affairs, the Dow up fractionally right now. That's the chart I was telling you about. The S&P down fractionally. Similar story for the NASDAQ, just very slightly in the red, but some pretty sharp moves after those reports came out again that the president was likely to fire Jerome Powell soon, according to a White House official. Now the president is saying that is highly unlikely. Joe Terranova, I want to come over to you. One of the things that you were watching was the dollar chart. A lot of movement in the dollar. The dollar also rebounding. But walk us through what you think the dollar chart was signaling, or dollar investors or currency investors were saying in response to these reports.
If the president were to fire the Federal Reserve Chairman, the two trouble spots that you would look towards would be, number one, the U.S. dollar, as we show that chart. It would resume the decline that we've seen so far year to date, down 9%. Then the other trouble spot would be in the long end of the curve. You watch the 30-year. 30-year spiked up to 5.07 during the news that potentially he was going to fire him. 515 is the high over the last 52 weeks. Those would be the two trouble spots. However, I will say this. I have said this over the last 4 weeks consistently. September 17th, my expectation is that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates. The president doesn't have to do this. He's going to get what he wants. On September 17th, in the congressional testimony, Chairman Powell identified 2 months worth of inflation data that was important to him. We've got 1 month already. It's not showing up to the degree of which would require him not to cut rates. September 17th, I believe they will.
Let's talk us through this thesis for a second, Joe, and I want to get to Sarat and Weiss in just a second. So you're saying in the July meeting, there's a dovish tone that leads us to that cut coming in September?
I don't know.
Well, just in all fairness, the president not only does he want cuts, he wants the short-term borrowing rate to go down. That could also be achieved somewhat by some signaling from the Fed that they're on the path to cutting rates as soon as September.
They could do that signaling. I'm not sure that you're going to get that signaling because you still want the July CPI reading, which will be reported in August. I think the chairman is going to want the benefit of that data as well. But I believe after that, it is going to show that the inflation is not spiking to the degree at which the chairman feared that it would. And I think on September 17th, they will be cutting rates.
All right. Weiss, Sarat, I want to come over to you guys. We know that the White House does respond to big movements in the bond market. We've heard Treasury Secretary Bessent just mention that they are very mindful of the bond market. Looking at the 30-year, it is above 5%. It has been all day, in all fairness. Steve, I want to come to you first. Your reaction just to that move in the bond market, bond investors reacting to the possibility of Jay Powell being fired.
Look, I think it's like anything else. The market has sort of taken a wait-and-see attitude. We've heard so much come out, going one way, then quickly reversing, going the other way. We just saw it now, where White House sources are saying he's going to fire him, and then he downplays it. So to position based upon that is sort of a mistake. But, you know, let's be clear. He said that he wants to. I think that has been sacred ground. And you need the checks and balances in government, and that's one of the critical ones. So somebody who just wants to cut rates, number one, to support their tax bill, and number two, to help all their friends around the country, right? Similar to what is being done with private equity, is just a mistake. And I'd correct one thing the president said. He said, I don't know how he put Powell in that position when it was Trump that put Powell in the position, so he does know. So bottom line is, I don't think it would be a good thing for the market. Hazard, you know, he's obviously smart, obviously knows his way around economics, but he's also a sycophant. So the pledge any of these people can have to make are to cut rates regardless of what the market's telling you. What Powell has done, he's made mistakes, but I think he's overall done a great job, is that you can't move too soon on these, because otherwise, if you go back the other way, you lose credibility. So it's a wait-and-see attitude. But to me, it's clear that he's going to try to do something.
All right, Sarah, I want to come over to you as well. Again, markets took a dip. They've recovered for the most part, kind of pretty much where they were before this report crossed the wires. I want to talk to you just about how equity investors should respond to even just the possibility of Jay Powell being fired. And by the way, we heard from Jamie Dimon and also David Solomon sitting right here at Post 9 talking about the importance of Fed independence.
Yeah, and Steve's absolutely right. You have a checks and balances in place. So I think right now where the market is, you know, at first, if you talk about Liberation Day and all that, it was, oh, we got a hint something was going to happen, the market reacted. It kind of reacted, a mini reaction, but until we see some action, I don't think the market's going to do anything. But it will do something if that does happen, because I do believe the uncertainty caused by that, and knowing, you know, the unknown as to who's going to take place, what is that person going to do, how low are rates going to go, and really what does that do to the market in terms of the 10-year and the long bond, because that's where a lot of the financing really happens. That's where valuations happen for equities. So I think that's going to be where people are going to be focused on, and the Fed does not control that part. They control the short-term part, which you're not going to, the more you refinance short-term, the higher the rates are going to go long-term. So who's going to win?
Yeah, let me just add to that. Take control once again, dictating where risk asset pricing goes, and that's not a good environment.
Right. Yeah, let me just add to that. So the market could very well, if he's putting in one of the people that have pledged to cut rates, it could rally in the short term and say, great, rates are coming down, let's party while the partying's good, and then retribution. That's the equity market. The bond market will be a different situation, as Joe points out. So you see a delinking.
It seems like you're kind of spelling out what Jamie Dimon was saying on the earnings call yesterday, basically saying in short, I think that the independence of the Fed is absolutely critical.
Yep.
Playing around with the Fed can have adverse consequences, the absolute opposite of what you might be hoping for. And if you're the president who's very mindful of the equity markets, what you're talking about, the bond market kind of leading the pricing. Also very important to note, the 2-year, I believe that yield's actually lower than it was before this announcement.
And it should be. The 2-year fell to 385. That's exactly what should happen based on this news. But what's interesting about this, let's pretend that we didn't hear any of these reports this morning, and we came in and we were talking about expectation for Fed policy. Was there anything in PPI or CPI that you saw that you said to yourself, oh, wait a second, the chairman is right, and we should not be lowering rates? I don't think any of that showed up. I think
not even core ticking up to 2.9 year over year?
No, I don't think there was enough evidence. I don't think there was enough evidence not to cut rates at some point in the next 3 to 6 months.
I don't think there's enough evidence to cut rates, because we've seen the date for tariffs keep getting pushed back. Yeah. So while Powell said we need to see 2 months of data, at that point, the drop dead date on agreements was supposed to have occurred. So we did see also in CPI some tick up.
In the goods, services was weak.
Right. So look, I don't think there's enough of a convincing case, other than the pressure Trump's applying, which I think Powell's immune from, to cut rates right now.
I think the PPI.
The economy's doing fine.
I think the PPI
but in all
gave
fairness,
you comfort on,
I don't know if that's consensus. In fact, Morgan Stanley out with a note earlier today talking about tariffs, their baseline scenario, saying in part, we continue to expect the strongest inflation push from tariffs is going to be in August. And they say that June's the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. They go on to talk about immigration and some other things, but they don't see any cuts this year.
Okay.
And I'm not far off their case either. I don't think that September's a slam dunk at all.
All right, Sarat, your take?
No, I mean, I do think it'll be interesting to see with the tariff issue coming in, because the Fed is going to be in a complete quandary. Prices higher, employment going, getting worse. What do you do? And then you want to ignite inflation, or how do you help the economy? So the tariff issue is this uncertain kick the can down the road. If that kind of gets resolved before the next number, then I think you could have a case to say, well, our expectations are going to be lower and employment is hard.
But it gets further complicated.
Right.
I think it's going to be permanently complicated. If you talk to anybody who's an administration official, or used to be, I think, a fair word for the president's mercurial. So it might be highly unlikely today. We're not quite sure what it could be tomorrow on Truth Social, or maybe overnight. So why don't we move on to what we do know?
Let me just give this one final comment, which is that you could see employment come down, but still wages go up because of the scarcity, because employment's going down because of all the labor that's been deported or is afraid to come out of wherever they're living.
All right, with that, why don't we move on? Goldman Sachs, just speaking of, we were just talking about David Solomon. David Solomon right here at Post 9, following earnings. Shares of Goldman moving a bit lower after what a lot of people really thought was a blowout earnings report. Joe, I'm going to come over to you. Equity trading jumped 36%. Investment banking fees jumped 26%. Mike Mayo calling it just a kind of a banner report. Also believes that buybacks are coming. His price target $7.85.
So what's interesting is that the fundamentals for money center banks are very strong, and they delivered on what your expectation should have been after witnessing the extreme volatility in the quarter. Trading revenue was remarkably strong. It wasn't just Goldman Sachs. Morgan Stanley's trading revenue was up 23%. But there is, in the environment of speculative trading, a moment where you have to have an awareness about a degree of exhaustion in price action. And leading up to earnings, there was very strong price action in the money center banks. And I think what we're seeing is a reflection of good news and bad price action, where it is a blowout quarter and you're really not getting the response in price. So what do you do with that as an investor? There's several things you could do. You could cut back on your positions. If you're long, you could sit back and say to yourself, okay, maybe the market's going to come to me if I've missed the trade. I don't want to step forward and do some buying right here.
Ya son 10:18
ya. Most importantly, you just over the next several days have to really look at the way that they are going to trade these money center banks universally. JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, all of them collectively, even how Wells Fargo and Citi are going to trade. You're going to see analysts, they're going to raise price targets on individual names like Goldman Sachs and Citi and Morgan Stanley. You're going to see if that gives a lift. But I think the next several days are really critical.
Un sinfín de activos. No manches, ya casi los 24,000. O sea, la semana pasada estábamos en 18,000, hemos subido más del 30% en 10 sesiones de mercado. Es una locura. Uf. No manches. $21. De todas maneras, tengo que también ponerme las pilas con otra cartera de un cliente. Vamos a sacarla por acá. Aquí está. Porque esa está sufriendo. Está sufriendo y le he dicho a mi cliente, aguántame. O sea, si se va a alzar,
Whether you're an
dale tiempo.
experienced investor or just getting started, Charles Schwab offers a webcast
Necesito
that's right for
que le
you.
des tiempo.
Are
Porque
you
si él
an
ha
active
depositado
trader?
como 18,000
Our
pesos.
active trading
Y ahorita está en
webcasts are
15,000. Es
designed
una
to
mala
help you
racha, por
develop a
supuesto que
deeper
sí.
understanding
Pero pues le vamos a
of
dar la
technical
vuelta,
analysis,
obviamente.
options, futures, and
Entonces,
more. Best of all, you can ask questions by chatting
la
directly
mayor
with
posición
an education coach.
PLRX.
It's interactive learning at its finest. Tune in live or watch on demand. Head over to schwab.com/coaching and start learning today.
No, ¿qué te pasa? Oiga, no les dije, pero mi teclado se volvió loco. Literal,
No
o sea, literal
politics,
se volvió loco.
no
se
noise,
escribe
from
solo,
bell to bell and
no se
beyond.
activa. ¿por qué?
Available anytime, anywhere, on
No se
any device
activa,
for
o
free.
sea, no sé qué le pasa.
Schwab Network.
Valió madres.
Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. We're talking earnings. United Airlines reports after the close today. As I mentioned, it got a big pop post Delta's results from last week. Kevin, you look at this, their expected numbers are supposed to be lower than last year for year-over-year numbers, but comparables were tough because that's when we saw that big spike in some of the TSA data, and demand for travel was spiking also. But I think what they want more than anything is probably the same type of report that Delta gave, right?
Well, it's not going to be about the comparable numbers. It's going to be about how they see the rest of the year going. And remember, during COVID, when travel plummeted, United put in a big order for jets. So they've done a good job of modernizing their fleet throughout this. And the premium seats, they've got basically the same business model as Delta. And that's why I think United popped on the Delta
No, pues
news.
ya
It
valió.
closed
Tendré
over
que cambiar
91
todo.
that day.
Voy a
Now
cerrar el
it's
directo aquí
86 and,
porque tengo que
you know,
desactivar
and
la cámara.
5/8. Look at me,
A
I
menos
did
que la
5/8.
desactive de una vez. A ver, vamos a
So,
desactivarla. O solamente que la haga más
I
pequeña.
think that they have
Esa es
they
la
do
otra.
have a similar story to
Aunque se va a ver
Delta. It
mi
won't be
cara de
exact,
frente o se
but
estaría
it'll be
así viendo
similar
todas las
as they've done a
pantallas.
good
Sería un
job with their
desmadre, pero
fleet
pues es lo que hay que
and
hacer.
the premium seating and international travel and all the parts of
Pues sí. Aparte
airlines
tendría que
that are
elevar la
doing well. So
pantalla. O sea,
I
habría
look
que hacer
forward to
varios
this. I think
cambios.
they'll be much closer to
Pero bueno,
Delta
esto era algo
than
innecesario.
some
O sea,
other struggling
no sabía
airlines. Let's
que,
put it that way.
Yeah,
pues iba a
Joe, and I
necesitar
think
un
a lot of
teclado.
things are going to rely on capacity here when you look at this because, the international travel's picked up, the premium seating's picked up for a lot of these airlines. United's comparable to Delta in that regard. But hey, say they start cutting, capacity. The market typically likes that, right?
Yeah, it does. I think expectations for earnings are around 388 a share. So, as Kevin mentioned, it's lower than last year, but it's not last year's comps. It's going to matter as much. It's projections, as he mentioned. So they're projecting quarterly revenue of about 15.33 billion. I think one of the differences, and maybe one of the feathers in the cap of United, is that back in April, when everybody was kind of adjusting their earnings forecast, even cutting forecast or refusing to give forecasts, right, kind of based upon the tariff outlays. United didn't pull their full-year financial guidance. They said that they can still make money during a recession as long as it can control costs and keep the planes full. Well, they've done a pretty decent job with that. So, for the rest of the year, adjusted earnings, their forecast is around 1150 to 1350. We'll see whether or not that's the case when we hear about it after the close. But there is one thing they're going to have to talk about, and that's just what's going on in Newark. That's where I fly into when we go out to New York City, and that's just been a bit of a disaster, right, with the flight delays and cancellations and everything with the air traffic controller disruptions. So that's probably something you're going to hear the analysts ask about. But you got a stock that is down about 8% year to date. But if you go back to kind of the peak where it hit in January, I mean, it's down about 23% from that 52-week high. So the stock's pulled back. As you guys mentioned, it got a nice little bump off the Delta news. It kind of broke out of a triangle pattern if you're looking at the technicals, and it's coming back to test those those former resistance levels to see if they're new support, and that's kind of the setup leading into earnings this afternoon.
Yeah, Scott Kirby, last quarter, or he stated at a Bernstein conference earlier this year that the disruptions that they had at the Newark airport were concerning, and stated almost certainly they would hit Q2 high end if not for Newark, and that's a big hub for them. I have never flown United out of O'Hare, and it's a hub here. But Joe, when you look at this,
you wear that like it's a badge of honor or something, Tom.
Well, it's almost like I should be flying United because it is a major hub for them and they're based here. But Joe, looking at this one, the option market pricing in about just over $6 move either way. How do you want to look at this one from an example trade?
Yeah, the market's moved a little bit since I sent it to you. So we're looking at the August 1st expiration. So it's actually going to go beyond this week's expiration and beyond next week's expiration. Gives you a little bit of a buffer in case there's a bigger move. Looking to sell the 80 put. So, currently trading at 86.66 with basically priced in about a $6.50 move off our earnings. That would take us down to about that 80 strike. That the difference is, when I was showing this one, you took about $1.50, and I think now you can probably get around $1.80, $1.85. So you're getting a little bit more premium for it. That would take us back down to about that 50-day moving average would be kind of that break even on that. So if you're looking at $1.50 as the credit you're collecting, your break even would be that $80 strike minus the $1.50 takes you down to about $78.50. Like I said, the stock is down about 23% from its 52-week high. Gives you a chance to maybe buy back in about with a break even about 9% below where we're currently trading. If you get assigned those puts, and if you believe in the United growth story, and if you believe in the fact that they can continue to cut costs and keep the planes full going forward.
All right, yeah, let's break this one down. Cash secured put example that Joe brought us here today, August 1st weekly cycle. So you got a couple weeks till expiration, not a pure earnings play. So you do have some duration in case the stock does fall maybe below 80. You don't get assigned on those. You still have duration in this one. But as Joe mentioned, if you collect a $1.50 credit, it takes your break even down to $78.50. But Kevin, you look at this, and it might give you that opportunity to buy the shares if it goes below the 80 strike into expiration over the next 16 days. So that might, allow you to maybe buy the shares at a cheaper price, and maybe you missed that 9% rally that we've seen so far this month, right?
Yeah, this is one of those situations where you're looking at a name with a below 8 PE, Tom, and Joe's setting his price where he would buy it below $80. And the question is, well, it's below an 8 PE here. What's it going to be down below 80, right? So, yeah, this is one of those times. Stock's not a $500 name, so a cash secured put doesn't bring in as much risk. You still have risk all the way down to zero. But, I mean, if you're thinking that you might want to be a buyer of United Airlines if it gets at or below $80, this is a way to get paid while you wait for it to get down, because frankly, it may never get down there, guys.
Yeah, and you got a lot of risk if the stock goes to zero, of course, over $7,800 on this one, Joe. But yeah, I always look at this, Joe, as twofold, right? I mean, the stock got down to $52 in those April lows. It's rallied pretty significantly. Delta definitely helps maybe the outlook for this company, but you've got to be comfortable owning the shares if you stay short those puts into expiration and it's below 80, right?
Yeah, you do, and one of the things that we brought up when we were kind of talking about the CPI and PPI data is we have seen a slowdown in transportation, right? I mean, that's a known fact. It's in the data showing that maybe that's an area where the wallet's getting squeezed a little bit for consumers, so they're cutting back on their travel. So you need to be mindful of that. I think what your bet is with this is that corporate travel continues to pick up. And you're looking for, the expanded margins on something like that. The last thing I will say kind of about this trade is, when I'm looking at a cash secured put, you want to kind of look at the return on risk, right? Like if you're risking $7,850 on this trade in 2%, to take on the risk of buying those shares. If you were just to put a limit order out there to buy the shares at $80, number one, there's no cash that you're securing, so there's no return on that capital. And number two, that actually is tying up buying power because that's not capital that you can allocate towards something else. So it's just really thinking about kind of capital optimization when you're looking at a trade like this, if you're looking to acquire shares. But the bottom line is, Tom, you got to be willing to own that stock, and you got to be willing to own the stock at that price in order to execute a trade like this.
Yeah, high probability of success is the trade-off with the potential for all that risk. All right, great stuff. Thanks to Joe Mazzola, head trading and derivatives strategist at Charles Schwab, joining us. Thanks, Joe. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to be joined by Andy Swan from Likefolio for a look at sentiment data in PepsiCo. The beverage and snack stock is near 5-year lows into their earnings tomorrow. GLP-1's hurting this stock? We're going to talk about this when we come back.
Bueno, de hecho no sé si sigo en vivo, también hay que checar ese desmadre. O sea, que mañana.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, unlocking the power of Thinkorswim, the award-winning trading platforms. Bring your trades into focus on Thinkorswim desktop with robust charting and analysis tools, including over 400 technical studies. Tailor the platforms to your unique needs with nearly endless customization. And track market trends with up-to-the-minute news and insights.
Listo. No, pues sí, en efecto se ve así chiquitito, pero aparte se ve justo lo que no quiero que se vea, el tendedero de ropa. Entonces es un desmadre. Pero bueno, seguimos. No, ya no seguimos.